Hello. Today we'll be talking about depressive disorders, in specific postpartum depression. So, before we dive into the study that we'll be talking to about today, I created a short and very precise vocabulary list just to have a bit of context and to furthermore understand the terminology within the study. So we can start with omega-3 PUFAs. These are just polyunsaturated fatty acids that are found in fish and can regulate inflammatory cytokines, provide good health benefits for babies and the mother, and also can prevent symptoms of postpartum depression and decrease symptoms of depression in general. EPAs, AAs, EPAs, and IL-6 and DHA. So basically, an EPA is a type of omega-3 acid found in cold water fish like salmon, along with DHA, which is another type of omega-3 fatty acid. Interleukin 6 is found in our bodies and is an inflammatory cytokine. AA is arachidonic acid. It's an inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid, and excess of it can lead to mood disorders and inflammatory diseases. An EPDS is a screening measure. It's called the Edinburgh. It stands for Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. It's 10 questions screening to determine if the mother has had depression or anxiety during a pregnancy. Postpartum depression was diagnosed if a mother scored 9 points or more within the study. So let's take a look at what postpartum depression is. So postpartum depression is what many women experience after giving birth. Some symptoms are insomnia, lack of appetite, or vice versa, intense irritability, etc. This can interfere, of course, with the mother taking care of herself and the baby. As well, any mother is at risk of undergoing through postpartum depression after giving birth. Although the actual causes of depressive disorders are still unknown, studies have shown that inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 have to do with the development of the disorder. And that is why research like the one done by Nagayasu et al., which is the study that we will be looking at today, has begun to wonder if during pregnancy we can try to prevent postpartum depression development. So the aim of this study was to determine whether the intake of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, prevented postpartum depression and if interleukin 6 was involved in this effect. The research, of course, hypothesized that omega-3 supplementation has a protective effect against postpartum depression. So the methodologies that they used were that the research measured for eicosapentaenoic acid, which is EPA, the arachidonic acid AA and EPA ratio, and IL-6, interleukin 6, in 80 singleton pregnant women during the first, second, and postpartum. By first and second, I mean trimesters, and singleton just basically means that they were pregnant with only one child. The women also completed a dietary questionnaire. Postpartum depression was measured using, of course, EPDS, as we previously mentioned, and the researchers examined the correlations between the frequency of eating fish and EPA, the AA-EPA ratio, and interleukin 6. They also investigated the correlation between EPDS and the EPA and the ratios and interleukin 6. So this is a visual of the timeline of the study. After approval, 80 singleton pregnant women, they were blood tested during the first trimester for EPA, AA, EPA ratios, and interleukin 6. And the second trimester was the same. But this time, they were also introduced with a frequency of eating fish. This is a dietary measure, a dietary questionnaire. 9 points basically meant that they were eating fish constantly at every meal, and 0 meant that they were not eating fish at all. Then blood test after delivery, and the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale 1 month after the babies were born. This is a visual representation of the screening of the EPDS. Then the results demonstrated that the frequency of eating fish was significantly correlated with EPA in the second trimester and postpartum, with the AA-EPA ratio in the second semester. There was no correlation between IL-6 levels and no frequency of eating fish. Postpartum levels of EPA and the AA-EPA ratio were higher in the EPDS group, greater than 7 group, than in the less than 7 or equal to 7 group. In the second trimester, a higher AA-EPA ratio was associated with EDPS and of course put them at risk for postpartum depression. In conclusion, a low dietary intake of omega-3 PUFA during pregnancy was correlated with lower EPA levels, which tended, as mentioned before, that led to postpartum depression. The relationship between IL-6 levels and the pathogenesis of postpartum depression was unclear from the results of the study, meaning that further research is required to establish a relationship between IL-6, postpartum depression, and AA-EPA ratios. And the researchers also found that the sufficient intake of omega-3 PUFAs during pregnancy may thus help to prevent postpartum depression.